Part 2, Auntie Helen.
When my time came to go up to Oxford, Vicky Bird was insistent that I should call on his old friend, Auntie Helen, who was no relation at all, in fact. I wrote to Auntie Helen's address in Ship Street. Next morning, I received a heather-coloured envelope of hand-laid bond with decal edges. Both the envelope and the letter it contained were heavily impregnated with an Indian perfume called patchouli. It was an invitation to tea on the following day. Because it is early closing and the stars are right. Couched in such terms, the request was impossible to refuse. Immediately I saw the outside of her door, I knew that I was in the right place. The large bronze lantern of Moorish design which loomed above the door was in keeping with the heather notepaper, the monogram, the scent of patchouli. The lantern was not lit, and it was dark at the head of the stairs. I felt at the door for a knocker, but my fingers encountered only a wrought iron grill. To one side of the door was a heavy metal knob cast in the form of a bull's head. Taking it by the horns, I tugged, and heard a peal which to anyone inside must have been deafening. Behind the grill, a panel was slid back. A hole about the size of a half-crown appeared, lit by the light within. Then the hole grew darker, but I caught a fleck of light in the pupil of an eye. A red light snapped on in the Moorish lantern above my head. Massive bolts were pulled back, creaking in their sockets, and the door swung open. In the shadows was a tall, stately woman dressed in a long black velvet gown. Suddenly, she stretched forward her arms, and in her cold white hands, heavy with barbaric rings, she caught mine. "So you have come, my young friend," she said. "Welcome." She yanked me across the threshold, shut the door, slammed the bolts to, and took a hurried quiz through the spy hole to see that no one had followed me. I had the sense of being admitted into a beleaguered fortress with enemy cavalry brandishing drawn sabers at my heels. Yet, as she came towards me, she made no allusion to her strange behavior. "You must pardon the squalor of my attic," she said. "But then, of course, if you're a friend of Vicky's, you're an artist and know that only tradesmen live in palaces today." I could imagine her in Phaedra, bringing the house to its feet, cheering, but in a hallway she was overpowering. She opened the door into a large room. A noise of scuffling and something long and thin and brown streaked past, pursued by something equally long and thin and brown. "You like mongooses, don't you?" she asked, or rather stated, because she waited for no answer. Then, catching me by the shoulders and staring into my eyes, asked, "What are you?" "I'm afraid I don't quite understand." "I mean, under what sign? When were you born?" "I was born under Leo." "Like Napoleon, Julius Caesar, the sign of greatness, I might have guessed." She must have been beautiful when young. Even now, with her heightened slenderness accentuated by the long black gown, tawny hair bound with a broad fillet of python skin, she was striking. "You must tell me the exact minute of your birth. I will cast your horoscope." She had the magnificence of one of the larger cats, a panther or a leopardess. For any normal woman, that attic, the depth and breadth of the house, with its high rafters meeting in semi-darkness 20 feet above the floor, would have provided an ample and gracious studio. Auntie Helen, as she strode up and down, made it appear a cage, and despite its odor of incense, its smell also was like a zoo. Against one wall was placed a huge divan, which must by night have served her as a bed, but during the day was a couch of Arabian opulence, covered with a rich spread and heaped high with cushions of diverse designs which somehow achieved exotic harmony. When I entered the room, the mongooses retired for a period beneath the divan, but when the kettle started to whistle, they emerged again and renewed their stampede across the bare boards, skidding wildly at corners on the polished floor. I thought they were fighting each other, perhaps for lack of snakes, until I saw the hinder one catch the dainty fugitive beneath the elegant spinet and fiercely consummate the pursuit of love. Watching from above were a grey parrot and a half-blind pine marten chained to a beam. Through the window in the twilight, I could see a roof of Balliol, and to the left, the lights of the corn market were beginning to creep into the sky. Without looking round, I knew that Auntie Helen was standing behind me, looking at the city which stood in my mind for beauty, freedom, and the exaltation of youth. An evil city, she said. A city full of Philistines and scheming tradesmen. If I wasn't a prisoner, I should be away, away. And then, as if she really was my auntie and I her nephew, I know how hungry young men get, so I've provided a special tea for you. And taking me by the hand, she led me to the divan. Why do you think all tradesmen are scheming? I asked as I bit into a cream-filled brandy snap. They batten on other people, grow fat, while artists starve. If I had my way, I'd string them up from every lamppost. I had tea many times with Auntie Helen, but seldom after that first encounter alone. Her intensity and incoherence were embarrassing tete-a-tete. Still more disquieting was her incandescent desire. I could always feel the pulsation of her physical need. To relax the tension, I introduced two friends of mine. Crispin Payne looked like Dorian Gray. Beautifully dressed in a powder blue suit which brought out the color of his eyes, he would mount the stairs to Auntie Helen's, carrying on his forearm a black silk umbrella which had never been unrolled, and in his hand a white arum lily which he presented to Auntie Helen after kissing her tenderly upon the mouth. One afternoon, while Colin Summerford was playing the spinet, Crispin leant back towards where she was sitting on the cushion. With his lips invitingly parted, he looked up. She looked down into his eyes, then turned to Colin. Crispin lay quite still. His only movement was a slight flickering of the lips. Slowly, she bent down and kissed him on the mouth. When she had finished, he sat up again with a small smile on his face, while through her body passed a convulsive tremor. I like your friend, Mr. Summerford, said Auntie Helen to me later. He has a beautiful aura. But Mr. Payne, isn't he rather a playboy? These tea parties brought ease to her spirit, but they consumed the few shillings which she had in ready cash. We brought supplies of cakes. She was insulted, as if I can't afford to give a tea party. But she couldn't. And in feeding her spirit, we were starving her body. We are all artists, I said, but can't I give you some money so that you won't have to stint yourself? My dear boy, she said, I don't want your money. As an artist who will have to fight the Philistines all your life, the sooner you learn this, the better. Remember, provided you order the best, there's no need to pay for it. Shopkeepers are parasites on society. The important thing to know is they are snobs. Never be mean. If you only buy a small bottle of eau de cologne, you can't put it on the bill. Buy a pint of Chanel. don't drink beer, order champagne. By the case. But when the bills come in, I threaten to transfer my custom. What do you do when they sue you? They don't, she said. Not for amounts under £50. It used to be 100. Things are getting tighter. I don't know what the world is coming to. But any big store knows that if they sue somebody who can't afford to pay a big bill, they'll drive away all the people who really can. But there are such people as debt collectors. Debt collectors. Underpaid, snivelling little bullies. No, it's the bailiffs that matter. They can be dangerous. All the same, a time will come when you will have to pay cash. Will it? I've been doing this for 16 years, and I've only just reached Edinburgh. There are still many large stores in many British cities simply waiting to take my custom. It's the bread and milk I'm thinking of. Wouldn't a pound... I don't want your money. But it is possible that you and your friends could help me sometime. One noon, I found a heather-coloured, deckle-edged envelope in my pigeonhole. Dear Mr. Calder-Marshall, will you please visit me immediately? Receive this note, bringing with you your largest suitcase, or Gladstone bag. P.S. Pull the bell 3 times sharply. P.P.S. These Philistines shall not have my lovely things. I pulled the bell 3 times, and the panel shot back. She had been waiting on the other side, and the door was open in a flash. To hell with mysticism. Bugger the stars. The swag was laid out already. She tore open the suitcase and piled in first the incense burner and then the heavy candlesticks. What about your rings? She snapped the case and held up her hand. Glass, she said, not worth tuppence. The suitcase was so heavy it seemed to pull my arm out of its socket. So she saw my face and took my chin in her hand and shook it. My boy, the siege is now on, she said, grinning. She welcomed the bailiffs. She wanted conflict, and she wanted a man in the house. Perhaps the bailiffs provided both, but I don't think so. Before they came, she was eager as a bride. When they left and I brought back the swag, she was sadder than a woman who had been deprived of satisfaction. Come and see me soon. Bring Mr. Payne and Somerford. It'll be like old times. The senior proctor summoned me next day. Mr. Calder-Marshall, sir? I understand you have been visiting the apartment of a Mrs. Helen Coughlin in Ship Street. Certainly, sir. She is an old friend of mine. I must instruct you not to visit there again or to see the lady. Isn't that equally insulting, sir, to the lady and to me? It is insulting to nobody, Mr. Calder-Marshall. This is merely a notification from the university authorities that, in their opinion, the lady in question is not suitable to consort with undergraduates. I walked out furious with the senior proctor, furious partly that the battalions of North Oxford still commanded the treatment of this pathetic woman, but I admit far more furious that the proctor shouldn't understand that the last thing I wanted was to become her lover.
Clearer, 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 the skies were clearer, clearer, clearer. There you lose all your blue blues, laughing and laughing.